Welcome back to Living Seth. Today we are diving headfirst into one of the most misunderstood concepts in the entire Seth material, the outer ego. Now, let's just get the popular myth out of the way right now. The ego is not some demonic force we need to obliterate. That is a fundamental misunderstanding that, quite frankly, drives me up a wall. The ego isn't the villain of your spiritual story. It's more like the overworked, perpetually stressed out middle manager of your consciousness. Its only real crime is taking its job way, way too seriously. Think about it. The outer ego is the part of you that signed up to manage this whole messy, complicated 3D circus we call physical reality. Its primary function, its entire job description, is survival and interaction within this specific dimensional framework. It does this by using your 5 physical senses to gather information. But here's the crucial part. Its job is also to filter out all the multidimensional truths that would utterly overwhelm you if they all came flooding in at once. After filtering everything, it organizes the remaining data into one coherent singular story of you existing in linear time. As you can imagine, this is exhausting work. Seth gives us a fantastic analogy for this. He says the outer ego is like a brilliant, highly specialized tuning dial on a radio. It's designed to lock onto one single frequency, the frequency of physical reality. Meanwhile, the rest of your vast, infinite soul, what Seth calls your inner self, is broadcasting on all possible frequencies simultaneously. Because of this dedicated one-track focus, the outer ego is built entirely upon the belief systems that you and your society have accepted since birth. This is where things get really interesting. Let's say your outer ego operates under the belief that all success requires back-breaking, miserable effort. If that's the core belief, your ego will act like the super-efficient president of that belief's fan club. It will actively process and highlight every single shred of evidence that confirms struggle is necessary. It will find examples everywhere. At the same time, it will censor or dismiss all the contradictory information that your inner self is constantly offering about flow, ease, and effortless creation. It's a hilarious and frustrating mechanism that we all deal with. You'll see proof of your limitations while ignoring all the proof of your power. Seth calls this highly efficient filtering system the tunnel of perception. And look, this tunnel is undeniably great for navigating complex physical tasks. You need it to drive a car, to focus on a spreadsheet, or to fill out your taxes. Without that focused attention, you'd be lost. But this focus creates a tragic and profound limitation. It completely excludes the vast panoramic reality that is happening just outside the edges of that tunnel. The outer ego then makes a critical error. It mistakes the tiny view from inside the tunnel for the entire universe. It thinks the part it can see is the only part that exists. This is why the ego gets so defensive and logically rigid whenever a sudden powerful flash of intuition or non-physical data tries to break through. When you get a gut feeling that goes against all logic, that's your inner self trying to tell your outer ego that reality is much larger and more malleable than its current spreadsheet allows. The ego, doing its job, often says, "Nope, doesn't compute. Not in my data set. It cannot exist." So when you feel stuck, when you feel powerless, it's almost never a lack of power. It's a failure of the ego to recognize its own limitations. It genuinely believes that if it can't measure it, touch it, or logically explain it based on its current limited data, then it simply isn't real. Therefore, while your daily physical experience is the highly selective creation of your outer ego, based on its learned and accepted rules, it's crucial to remember what it is and what it isn't. The outer ego is the architect of the house you currently live in. But it is absolutely not the unlimited energy source that powers the entire creative city you are connected to. It's the manager, not the CEO. This distinction is everything. We must move past just defining this manager and start looking at how we can introduce it to its actual boss, the infinitely powerful inner self. When the ego understands its true role as a partner, not a dictator, that's when the magic really begins. That's when you start consciously creating your reality instead of just reacting to it. So, the next time you feel that internal resistance or that voice of doubt, don't fight it, recognize it. Say, there's my hard-working outer ego, just trying to keep me safe based on the old rules. Thank it for its service, but gently remind it that there's a bigger reality to explore, one filled with ease, joy, and infinite possibility. Okay, so let's dive back in. We've talked about the outer ego, your super efficient, but let's be honest, slightly neurotic personal assistant for navigating physical reality. It's the part of you that makes sure you pay your bills, look both ways before crossing the street, and reminds you of that embarrassing thing you did in 7th grade. But now, we need to talk about its biggest flaw, its Achilles heel, its profound and often comically tragic short-sightedness. You see, the outer ego is obsessed with keeping you safe based on what it already knows. It's a creature of habit, logic, and past data. Its entire operating system is built on historical evidence. Because of this, it simply cannot compute the vast, multi-dimensional, infinite nature of your inner self. Think of it this way. The outer ego is the receptionist at the front desk of a massive global corporation, and it genuinely believes it's the CEO. The inner self, on the other hand, is the entire corporation, the CEO, the board, the innovation labs, the global network, everything. The outer ego, bless its cotton socks, functions from a place of self-preservation, which in our day-to-day lives often shows up as fear, doubt, and a frustrating level of rigidity. It loves a good color-coded binder and a predictable 5-year plan. So, what happens when a massive, brilliant, world-changing idea comes bubbling up from the depths of your inner self? You know the feeling, that sudden surge of creative inspiration, that intuitive gut feeling, that big, hairy, audacious goal that doesn't fit into any of the outer ego's neatly labeled files. What does the outer ego do? It hits the panic button, it flashes red alert lights and screams, "Abort mission! This is not logical! This is not on the spreadsheet." It immediately pulls up the file labeled, "Times we tried something new and it was uncomfortable," conveniently ignoring all the times it was amazing. Its primary function becomes to maintain the status quo at all costs. "Let's just keep things as they are," it pleads. "It's safe here. It's predictable." This is precisely why real, meaningful, soul-aligned change feels so incredibly difficult. It's like you're the visionary founder of a company, trying to launch a revolutionary new product line, but your front desk manager is actively blocking the door to the innovation lab, convinced it's protecting the company from bankruptcy. In my, let's say, strong opinion, this internal tug-of-war is the single greatest source of unnecessary suffering on the planet. It is the friction between who you truly are and who you're afraid you have to be. But here's the crucial part. The outer ego isn't a lone wolf, thank goodness. It's in constant necessary communication with that greater power, the inner self. Your inner self is your eternal essence. It's not bound by time or space. It exists everywhere, all at once. It's the source of your infinite wisdom, your deepest knowing, and your innate power to heal and create. It's always, and I mean always, broadcasting guidance to you. How does it do that? Well, it speaks in the language of intuition, those gut feelings you can't explain. It communicates through dreams, giving you symbolic messages from your subconscious. It orchestrates powerful synchronicities, those coincidences that are just too perfect to be random. and it sends those sudden, undeniable jolts of inspiration that make you want to quit your corporate job and open a pottery studio, or finally sit down and write that novel you've been dreaming about for years. These are not random brain glitches. They are direct, loving communications from your core being, attempting to expand the outer ego's very narrow, very limited field of vision. They are invitations to grow, to evolve, to become more of who you truly are. So, if the guidance is always being sent, what's the problem? The core issue, the one we all stumble over, isn't the communication itself. The signal is crystal clear. The problem is the outer ego's stubborn refusal to take direction from a source it doesn't understand. The inner self speaks the language of feeling, of resonance, of profound, unshakable knowing. The outer ego, being the logic and data-driven manager that it is, looks at this and dismisses it. "Oh, that's just a fantasy," it says. "That's a coincidence." Or its favorite shutdown line, "You're just being too emotional." This is where the misalignment happens. This is the root of feeling stuck, of lacking motivation, of feeling like you're constantly hitting invisible walls in your life. It's the direct result of your inner self broadcasting a powerful, beautiful current of purpose, of joy, of expansion, while your outer ego, clinging desperately to its tiny, outdated rulebook of limiting beliefs, only allows a miserable little trickle to get through. Imagine a massive hydroelectric dam. That's your inner self, a source of immense power. Now imagine the outer ego is the guy in charge of the floodgates, and he is only opening them a tiny crack because he's afraid of what might happen if he lets the full force of the water through. What does that create? An incredible amount of pressure and tension, both psychologically and even physically in your body. That's the feeling of being misaligned. But here's the beautiful, liberating news. The solution is never to fight, destroy, or ignore your outer ego. You need that manager. It's incredibly valuable for functioning in this world. The solution is to re-educate it. It's about gently and lovingly teaching it a new job description. Its purpose is not to be the master, the commander-in-chief, the one calling all the shots. Its true, more powerful role is to be the faithful servant of the magnificent inner self. The goal is to get your outer ego to a place where it understands that its old, rigid operating instructions are not the whole truth of who you are. The work involves helping it relax its death grip on the controls, giving it permission to trust a higher wisdom. We can teach it that following the guidance of the inner self doesn't lead to danger, but to a level of success, joy, and fulfillment it could never have orchestrated on its own. The real work, the journey we're all on, begins when we learn to consciously listen for that inner guidance and start to gently question the outer ego's fear-based objections. It's about examining those core limiting beliefs and starting the process of letting more of that incredible power through. And that is exactly what we need to dig into next. All right, let's talk about the big question. How do we actually put that noisy, anxious outer ego back in its place? How do we stop being a puppet to its constant need for approval and finally start listening to the calm, wise voice of our inner self? This isn't about flipping a switch and becoming perfect overnight. It's a practice. It's about building a small buffer, a little bit of space between what happens out there and how you react in here. It is how you transform your life from a frantic performance for an invisible audience into a grounded, authentic existence. The first tool in our kit is incredibly simple, but absolutely revolutionary: the pause. Think about it. The outer ego's signature move is to hijack your emotions. A co-worker makes a slightly passive-aggressive comment. A friend announces a big promotion you secretly wanted. You scroll past someone's picture-perfect vacation on social media, and bam! Instantly, your outer ego starts screaming. It spins a story of threat, of inadequacy, of envy. It demands you react right now. Fire back with a witty comeback, wallow in self-pity, or start desperately plotting how you can one-up them. The pause is your interruption button on that entire chaotic process. The next time you feel that familiar tension rising, that hot flush of defensiveness, or that sinking feeling of being less than, do nothing. Don't speak, don't type, don't react. Just stop. Take one single deep, conscious breath. In that one breath, you create a tiny sacred window of awareness. You're no longer the one being tossed around by the emotional storm. You've become the observer, watching the storm from a safe distance. In that quiet moment, you can ask yourself a simple, clarifying question. Is this feeling coming from my authentic inner self, or is this my outer ego just trying to win some imaginary status game? 9 times out of 10, you'll know the answer immediately. Your inner self rarely panics. It doesn't get rattled by a snide remark or a social media post. This pause gives your true self just enough time to step in and choose a wiser, calmer response, instead of letting the outer ego run the show. Okay, so we've learned to pause. What's next? The next step is to actively start identifying and questioning the rules. Your outer ego doesn't just operate on random impulse. It follows a very strict, unwritten rulebook. This rulebook is filled with all the societal and family codes you absorbed growing up about what it means to be good, successful, or worthy. Maybe your rules sound like this. You must always be the smartest person in the room. Or, if you aren't busy, you're lazy. Or the big one, your value is directly tied to your job title, your bank account, or how you look. To break free from these rules, you first have to know what they are. You have to read your own internal rulebook, so the next time you feel the outer ego pushing you to do something, like buying an expensive gadget you can't really afford, or saying yes to another commitment that fills you with dread, stop, pause, and identify the specific rule that's driving you. Write it down if you have to. For example, I'm only successful if I own the newest, shiniest version of this thing. Once you see the rule written out in black and white, you can start to question it. Get genuinely curious. Ask yourself, is this rule really, universally, and eternally true for everyone, everywhere? Whose voice is this really? Is this my authentic self talking, or does it sound more like a parent, a teacher, or some influencer I follow? And the most powerful question of all, what would actually happen if I broke this rule just this once? What you will find is that when you hold these rules up to the light of your conscious awareness, they often just dissolve. You realize they're not fundamental laws of the universe. They're just fragile ideas we've all agreed to believe. The outer ego loses its power when its laws are challenged by the quiet, steady authority of your true self. This brings us to the final, and perhaps most important, piece of the puzzle: redefining success by inner metrics. The outer ego's version of success is always external, and it's always finite. It's a gold medal, a corner office, a certain number in your bank account, a certain number of followers. But here's the trap. Once you achieve one of these external goals, the outer ego doesn't celebrate for long. It just moves the goalposts. You get the promotion, and now it wants you to be the CEO. You hit your savings goal, and now it wants you to double it. You're left perpetually striving, always feeling like you're falling short. The only way to get off this hamster wheel is to switch to a completely different scoreboard, one based on inner metrics. Your inner self defines success very differently. It's not about what you acquire, it's about your alignment and your contribution. So what does success look like through the eyes of your most authentic self? It might sound like asking yourself, did I live with integrity today? Did I create something that felt meaningful to me? Did I honor my own energy and my boundaries? Did I act with kindness to others and to myself? Start tracking these inner metrics at the end of each day. Instead of reviewing what you got, review how you showed up. Were you aligned with your core values? Did you act in a way that made you feel whole and proud regardless of the outcome? When you consistently start making decisions based on what makes you feel internally centered, rather than what you think will look externally impressive, something amazing happens. The outer ego naturally gets quieter. It becomes less and less relevant because you've stopped feeding it the one thing it craves, your attention. Let me be clear. Transcending the outer ego isn't about destroying it or getting rid of it. It's a part of you. Think of it like a suit of armor that helped you navigate the world. This journey is about acknowledging its function and then gently taking the control panel back and giving it to the true pilot, your inner self. Through the practice of pausing, of questioning the rules, and of redefining success, you begin to shift from living a life designed to impress other people to living a life designed to fulfill you. And that, right there, is where true, deep, and sustainable peace begins. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today. If this resonated with you, I'd be so grateful if you like this video and subscribe to the channel for more conversations like this. I'll see you in the next one.